Hello, everyone. I'm Darian Gold, and welcome to All Things Pilates Season 5. There is a collective fascination with Joe Pilates, his method and inventions. The exercise paradigm continues to evolve, as does our understanding of Joe's genius. So join us because we know there is always more to explore. With us today is Sonje Mayo, a Pilates educator and physical therapist. In 2018, when I still had my live radio show, Sonje was a guest, and I and my listeners learned a bit about her. For instance, we learned about Sonje moving from her South African home to dance in England, and then to New York City to continue her dance career. She also told us about studying dance at the famed Martha Graham School and how she discovered Joe Pilates. Like many dancers, injured or simply needing a conditioning method, Sonje found herself at the Contrology studio. Over a period of 2 years, she learned the Contrology system from Joe Pilates. With the rich and unparalleled education she received, Sonje travels around the world, helping Pilates teachers understand how to get the most out of the method. Here to share more with us is Sonje Mayo. Hello, Sonje. Welcome back to All Things Pilates.
Thank you very much, Darian. I'm so happy to be here.
Sonje, when you work with a body in the Pilates environment, do you find yourself applying your physical therapy training? And what comes to your mind first, Joe's voice or your physical therapy education?
That's an interesting question. I have to say that I do always have Joe's voice in my ear. And of course, I'll never forget what he taught me. But to be honest, I do always look at everyone through the eyes of a physical therapist. It's just innate. And that's what taught me to really conduct a very good body scan. So I've kind of perfected that with my physiotherapy skills. But of course, I'm always maintaining the integrity of the method.
When you have fine-tuned this ability to scan a body and what to do with this body, is this something that you also teach to Pilates teachers? Because we weren't really taught in depth what to do. We were taught to watch the gait and watch the swing of the arms and the neck and the rib cage. Do you offer something that might be really helpful?
Yes, I do. Anybody that, first of all, anybody who comes here and observes, or even when I go and teach abroad, whenever I get a new person for a private, and you know there's always an audience, I always do a body scan, front, side, back, and I point things out to people. And it's amazing how little people see. You have to train your eye. These things are very subtle. And so I've shown them how to look for levels, and I've shown them how to do all those things, but specifically to see the position of the pelvis. And a lot of them still would kind of misread, for instance, a sway back posture and term it a lordosis. And I would have to tell them how to find the difference and how you would find the difference eventually. Yes, so I do incorporate that in my teaching when I obviously treat my clients, but also when I teach abroad or workshops, very much so.
Did Joe do that?
You know, Joe he didn't actually make you stand there, but he was so quick to pick up things. He would just instinctively, I suppose it was his experience and having taught so many people, he was just amazing. The first thing when he put you on the mat, he kind of already knew. It was almost magical that he could immediately see and hone in on the problem.
And he saw your low back issue.
Oh, yes, yes. That he saw immediately, and he couldn't believe that I was actually dancing with that. He said, I'm sure that you cannot be consistently good. And I said, that's precisely why I'm here. Because as hard as I work, one day I'm good and one day I'm not.
One day you can pirouette and one day you cannot.
Exactly. One day you can turn and one day you can't. And you know that if you have a technique, that's nonsense. You should always be able to do everything every time, irrespective of how bad you feel or anything. So quite right. He saw it and he immediately addressed it. He did not waste time.
Do you think Joe would agree with how physical therapists have incorporated his methodology?
I definitely think he would be very flattered. Physical therapists, always treat the acute condition, and then they send people out in the world with some exercises. So consequently, one always wondered as a physical therapist whether these people actually rehabbed properly. Now, Pilates is that stepping stone from the acute treatment to full rehabilitation and safely. So a lot of physical therapists learned Pilates. They saw the value of it, and they can keep the client a little bit longer, or the patient, it would be then a little longer, to rehab them a little better and then send them to continue with another Pilates teacher. So I think Joe would really agree to that.
Then Joe's method should be part of the curriculum then for a physical therapist.
Well, not really, because remember, the physical therapy does concentrate mainly on the acute condition. They don't really have time to follow someone through. But then, just as with any speciality, for instance, one physiotherapist would treat the acute condition and then pass them on to the ones that have got the Pilates skills to take them a little further. So I think that's what's happening. And that's a really good thing.
And you would say that for the most part, physical therapists have embraced his method. They know the power of his work.
Oh, yes. I think physical therapists with their training have been quick to realize the value of the work, very quick.
That's good to hear.
It makes anatomical sense, very good anatomical sense. And that's what they'll trust it.
Do you teach physical therapists this work?
No, I don't. I've had 2 or 3 physical therapists who came to observe and then were so inspired that they did Pilates.
Oh.
And in fact, those 3 send me a lot of work because they'll take them to a certain point and then they'll go, okay, now we're going to send you to Sonje and she's going to complete the rehab. So it's been a good collaboration, yes.
Yes. Because you have so much background in both fields. We need more Sonjes. We need more Sonjes.
There are quite a few of us out there that have both the Pilates and the physical therapy. I'm surprised. I'm meeting more and more of them.
Wonderful.
Yes.
When you travel to different countries, have you noticed, speaking of the bridge, maybe now we can talk about the gaps. Are there gaps that you have observed in the various Pilates programs when you do travel?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. One has to be very careful how you address this, but we know that certain people haven't been trained as efficiently or as correctly as they should have been. And I think doing workshops all over the world and you meet these people, it's great because you can help them. It's not a question of that they weren't capable, they weren't just taught well enough. And then they're working on their own in isolation, so they don't develop. So when they do these workshops and you draw their attention to the few inadequacies, I'll put it that way, that they have, they are so thankful because, it brings me to this whole thing about the competition. They don't want to go to another teacher in their town it's it's a sad situation. So thank God for workshops.
Yes. And that was one of my questions. And I would maybe just follow up with what you just said with this question, because that competitive nature is not helpful. And do you think that there is a lack of camaraderie in the Pilates community?
Yes.
I have a few students who study certain teachers, and they've commented that there is a sort of a cultish vibe. And I wonder why you think that is. Why can't this community be more inclusive and learn from each other?
Precisely. I think it all goes down to the fact that a lot of teachers are so scared they're going to lose their clients. And therefore, they don't want them to go and shop elsewhere. And what they have to learn is if your client's going to leave you for someone else, then maybe you should look at yourself and see why that's happening. You should not blame the other teacher that's lured them away. But I will say this, we think the classical system, the classical Pilates system has definitely become a sort of an elite society. It was very much like Martha Graham. You must think of this. She started a contemporary dance technique that was meant for everybody. And in fact, she became more elitist than ballet after that. So we look at that. So we have this elite group of Pilates teachers, classically trained, and they consider themselves the cream of the crop, and rightly so, because if you have to look at the hours they've trained. I mean, most of us have trained close to 700 hours. And then you've got people coming in who train maybe sporadically for not even 100 or 200 hours. And therefore, we feel, I shouldn't say that, the classical people feel that they're not adequately trained and that they're not safe and that they may give Pilates a bad name. So that's where the division comes. Now, I say this. I have met many people who are perfectly trained, such a good training. And guess what? They've turned out to be, in the long run, very bad teachers. They've let themselves go. They've got sloppy. So there's no guarantee that if you have a wonderful classical training, that it's going to last forever. You have to work at that. Now, I've seen others who come from what we call a contemporary training, very poorly trained, but they realize there's something missing. They keep going to workshops, they come to privates, and they turn out to be wonderful teachers. So to get back to your point, camaraderie, everybody should have open doors. When I go away, I tell all my clients to go to various teachers in the area. I say, you need to go, you need to hear it from someone else, you need to work with someone else. And if it's a better fit, it's no problem for me. I never ever want to hog anybody and feel that they're committed to me and that I own them. And after all I've done for you, there's none of that. So again, workshops. People have asked me, will I accept just anybody? And I go, well, when you say anybody, it's got to be someone with a training. If it's inferior, that's fine. That's fine. But they're going to be working very hard to learn the classical way. So they have to realize that. So I think there is room for everybody, but there is room for the contemporary people in some matters. A lot of people don't want to work very hard, and they'd rather go there for the social thing. And I think that's acceptable. Yeah, I think it's acceptable. I think it's better than nothing. It's not Pilates really, because they use it more as an aerobic kind of workout.
Yes, I've noticed that.
But, a lot of those people suddenly question this after a while, and then they find a classical teacher. So are we going to say that those people have got to go? No, I think they do serve. I think there's room for all of us.
I agree.
Good.
We just maybe need to look at ourselves, like you're saying.
That's it.
I just had this conversation, I think, recently. We all have something to offer.
Yes.
And if we feel passionate about the work, we're coming from that place of passion, and we're all different.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of personality thing too. Do you know how some people just click better with some teachers, and that's how it has to be. So I think the camaraderie. I'll tell you this: you won't get this fierce competition amongst teachers who are very secure in their teaching and who are very secure by nature. They don't feel threatened and they don't feel they have to please anybody. You will find that camaraderie there. You unfortunately find this competition and this backbiting in people who are vying to get to the top. Meantime, they should realize there is no vying because there is no top. I suppose it's a little bit like society, isn't it?
Yes, Sonje, it's really true. We have to keep staying in our own truth and what our own personal goals are and what we think we have to offer people.
Absolutely. And that's it. You have to have a teacher have self-respect, and you have to have knowledge, and you have to have empathy, and you have to be passionate about it, as you say. And you will teach your clients to the best of your ability. And if they leave, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, you will not be upset. You will not go and call them back. A lot of people find that the work that I'm perhaps a little bit too strict, too hard. And I say to them, I'll recommend you to someone, one of my teachers who's a lot kinder. And you know what? After 3 months, they're ready for me again.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Sonje, Pilatesology, for those who don't know, it's a classical Pilates educational online platform. You're on there a lot. And in one workshop, you spent a lot of time explaining how to teach spinal extension. And I know we're just here with audio, but to the best of your ability, can you explain what a teacher needs to look for with a student when approaching back extension work like double leg kick or a swan dive, especially in the classical technique? I think one of the arguments on the contemporary side is we simply have too much flexion. Flexion is easier than extension, as you point out a lot. So what are key points that you can share about what back extension is all about?
Well, I would actually need a good hour to really get into the subject in depth.
Okay.
But let's put it this way. First of all, as we know, extension is a much more difficult action than flexion because the extensors are approximately 3 times as weak and they take long to recover. And then we look at the method, how Joe, when he started, never introduced extension to a beginner. He just spoke about a neutral pelvis and an elongated spine, but there was no extension, hyperextension as such, because he realized how weak people's extensors are. The extension was built slowly into the method to make sure that they really understood it and that they could balance extensors with the front body, which are the abdominals. So I see why the contemporary people say there's too much rounding and not enough extension, because if they knew how hard extension was, they wouldn't say that. But unfortunately, most people just passively go into an arch by pushing up on their hands, and they do it by lifting their legs and collapsing in their lower back, and therefore their back extensors are not really working. So here you've got someone lying on their stomach. The first thing they've got to be able to do is to lift the ribs, sandwich the spine, then come up with their feet down. So which means now you've only got to use your upper back extensors. And let's see if you can even lift off the mat like that, never mind with straight arms, and your ribs off the mat. So there's the challenge. So yes, if I could just lie on the beach and arch, that's nothing. But if I have to do it actively, it's a very difficult action and difficult for people to even fathom and understand. Therefore, your pre-Pilates exercise flight which is the fundamental for extension, is not taught early in the system. It's taught only when you're getting ready to introduce extension. And then we look where extension goes. In the super advanced, there's more extension than flexion. So it's a slow process. It's a slow process and a difficult one.
And perhaps people are a little impatient and they just want that chest opening.
Of course, yes. Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure you get asked all the time about your learning the method from Joe. What would you say was one of the most valuable pieces of knowledge you learned and that you still apply today?
So the most valuable thing I learned from Joe was with undoubtedly the position of the pelvis, the perfect placement, what we would call a vertical pelvis. Some people call it a neutral pelvis. His whole system is based on that. So we talk about the core, but the core is actually what holds the pelvis in position. If your pelvis is correctly placed, that is the foundation. And your spine will follow correctly on the good foundation. If your pelvis is tilted anteriorly or posteriorly, the rest of your spine's got to make enormous compensations, which means you're always working at a mechanical disadvantage. You don't have elongation, you don't have a plumb line. You've got all sorts of alterations to cope with a pelvis that's not perfectly placed. So when I understood that aspect from Joe, I realized that is what his work is based on. It is precisely that. What are we aiming at? To stand up straight and to age well, and to age with healthy spines, no compression, no injuries, and you get that from a perfectly placed pelvis. It's actually so simple that it's almost laughable.
How did he know that, though?
There you go. This is why I say he was uneducated in terms of anatomy and physiology. It was all self-taught, but he learned it from observation. He learned it also from observation. And he had this keen instinct, and he innately could just see these things. It's almost, I always used to think he had X-ray eyes because he could see these things so quickly. I also think that Joe, having actually very good proportions himself, he has a good proportion of body to legs. In the beginning, he told me he didn't realize how difficult it was to work with long levers. And only when these dancers came in with these long levers and shorter bodies did he change a lot of things. You know, he was very rigid in the beginning. You do it his way and no other way. And you remember those pictures where he's pressing people down because they were so stiff. So he changed a lot. He evolved, as did Martha Graham. She admitted that it took her 3 generations to perfect her technique. She saw what the technique was doing. And she thought, oh, too much of this, too little of that. And I think Joe, the same, he evolved as he went along because bodies were changing, people were changing, demands were changing. And we're still evolving.
Demands on the body? Is that what you're saying, demands on the body?
Yes, you know, what happens is that the body proportions play such an important role. But when we think of how Joe and Martha Graham evolved, meant that they looked at their teaching method. They started looking at the product they were producing and then said, well, maybe this is not altogether that balanced. Maybe I need to do a little more of this and a little less of that, because, you know, a lot of the things that Joe did are now archival. They don't do them anymore. And the reason for that is he decided they weren't worth it anymore. People forget.
Should we be doing them?
We don't do them anymore, those old archival exercises, because he decided he's taking them out of the method. So that was part of him evolving.
If we went back in and captured all of his archival exercises that he chose not to use anymore,
Yes.
With the knowledge that we have now of the body, do you think that they would be incorporated in a healthy way?
No. I think he knew what he was doing. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. People were changing, and therefore the method had to change with them. So it's interesting to see the archival things, but we don't do them anymore. I think also maybe he foresaw injuries with it. It could be that. Maybe he saw people getting injured with it, even though you taught it carefully. I'm sure there were many reasons why he did that.
Do archival exercises that you're speaking of, does it mean that the pelvis wasn't in a healthy position no matter what the exercise was?
I'm not so sure if it was only that. I think maybe it was just not functional anymore, or maybe not really necessary anymore. It was a question of also you have to make choices about the best set of movements in a limited time. So I think that was a lot of that too. They were discarded because they were maybe repetitive, or maybe it was overkill in one direction. I'm not quite sure why he discarded them, and I don't think we'll ever know. First of all, I was not around when he taught those archival exercises. By the time I got there, it was the last 2 years of his life. He apparently had changed tremendously from the 1940s. So that's very interesting, isn't it?
Very.
So he started with this, we remember, in the late 20s, taught in the 30s, the 40s, and that his book was done when he was a relatively young man. And a lot of those things we don't even do anymore. So he did evolve. Maybe his age taught him things too. There are reasons why people do evolve. As you age, you suddenly start realizing, well, listen, this doesn't suit my body anymore. And because it doesn't suit my body, maybe this is not what we should be teaching. So I'm sure that some people have done research on this, but I don't think we'll ever get the true answers because unfortunately, Joe's not here to tell us.
Right. Though there are people that seem to speak for him, which gets a little confusing.
Yes, that's true.
Sonje, what do you imagine future generations will understand about Joe's method?
I think it's going to evolve. This method will evolve. As I've told people, quite a few of us, have taken the method and created things like the mat on the Cadillac, the reformer on the Cadillac, the mat on the Wunder chair. So we are taking the method and we're just doing all the exercises that we know, that we're familiar with a different relationship to gravity. As it were, we're not changing the method, we're maintaining the integrity, but we certainly are taking it into a new realm. And I think that's what's going to happen with the method. I think it'll still maintain its integrity, but people will start taking it further just because of people who are so much more athletic now. So many more people are doing Pilates. We don't just have your little housewife coming anymore. We have all sorts of athletes. We have medical people coming. So I think it will evolve. It will never be stationary. And that's a good thing, because something that develops stays alive. Something that is stagnant dies. So I foresee the future that it will keep evolving.
What is your advice for Pilates teachers and those interested in becoming a Pilates teacher?
I think the ones who are interested in becoming Pilates teachers must first of all know that it's not easy. It's not easy. You have to have a passion not only for Pilates, but you have to have a passion for teaching. Because it is hard work. It is hard work pulling blood out of stones. It really is hard work. And you've got to keep your energy going, and you've got to deal with all these personalities. And it's not like a class, it's one-on-one, mostly. And therefore, you have to have the right kind of personality. There is no right kind of personality, but you have to have the right approach to do this. That's for the ones who want to become teachers. Now, as far as Pilates teachers are concerned, if you do not keep practicing self-practice, you will not grow as a teacher. You never will. You will forget what's possible. You'll forget how to describe small sensations that you only feel when you do it yourself. You will not be able to foresee the problems that they're going to come. You will not be able to preempt things that they're going to do because you are not doing it yourself.
100%.
So those people who just teach and do nothing else, first of all, you are going to lose interest very quickly. Secondly, you are going to bore your clients, bore them. And I must say this, Joe always said, if your clients are bored, you are boring. You are boring. Those clients who say, I want to do more, I want to do more. Then there's something wrong with your teaching. Because if a client is not satisfied and exhausted by the end from doing simple things, then you haven't got through to them. Now, that's quite a concept one has to understand. It's not about doing many exercises, many reps and going into speed and building up a sweat. It's about the intensity of the work and how you can really involve them in that work. Nobody can leave dissatisfied if you do that. No one can come back and say, I want to do harder things. They're probably going to say, oh, last lesson was so difficult. Maybe we should hold back. No one's going to ask for more if you teach correctly. So that's all I can say to Pilates teachers. I would always say, don't work on yourself on your own too much. You need to get someone to come and watch you, just in case you're working deeper and deeper into your own faults. If you work on your own, don't do the advanced, stay with the intermediate. Because the advanced, someone you should have an eye. You should have an eye. And also work with one of your teachers, because you can watch one another quite easily. Little things like, oh, your head's in the wrong place, or your alignment's wrong, or your ribs are sticking out. It's always good to have someone there with you who kind of help one another. And it's also nicer to work with someone than being on your own. So that's my advice.
Fantastic advice. And it really needs to be said. And I'm very grateful that you said what you said.
Thank you.
Now, if people listening don't want to come running to your studio to work with you, something's wrong with them. I certainly do. If people do want to contact you about classes and workshops, what's the best way?
The best way is to go to my site, www.sonjemayo.com. I list all my workshops on that. My email is there. My cell phone number is there. So if they want to contact me, it's best to just go to my site and find the contact details. And they can also see what's coming up and where we're going. And I do get a lot of that. I find people who've turned up at workshops and I go, how did you get here? And she goes, oh, I looked on your site.
Oh.
So, and the registration is there for all the workshops all over the world and in America. So they can just do it directly.
And your studio is located where?
It's located in Nashville.
Oh, you're in Nashville.
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Yes.
Ah, and you have teachers that come and observe and watch you.
Oh, yes. Yes. And from far and wide, so it's, they contact me. I'm getting someone now coming from Japan. They're coming for a week to observe. And I kind of feel, gee whiz, these poor people coming this long way. I hope I can give them enough information in this week,
Oh, you don't.
And then she'll show them the city.
You don't need to worry about that, Sonje. Decades to share. Decades.
Well, thank you. I hope that I always feel, I hope I don't let them down.
Well, you haven't. You certainly haven't today. I want to thank you again for your time.
That's an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Darian. And thank you for doing these podcasts. I think they help our Pilates community tremendously. And I think that thank God for people like you and Pilatesology who put it out there. That is so important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll see you at some point, Sonje, live with your hands on me.
Okay, sometime, somewhere.
All Things Pilates is produced, written, edited, and hosted by me, Darian Gold. Mastered audio mix by Fabian Romero. This season, we have all original music by AKA Johnny. Also, if you're enjoying this podcast, you have the opportunity to support it for as little as $3 a month. You'll see the link in the show notes, and just know that every dollar helps me continue to bring you the most interesting guests in the Pilates community. One definition of the term cult is a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. I believe there is a cultish thread that seems to be sewn into our community, and it makes me think that students might want to have more belief in themselves rather than a so-called leader. Take a second look at what you're about and what you have to offer, and just maybe you're missing out on celebrating yourself. Thanks so much for being with us, and meet you here in a couple of weeks for another episode of All Things Pilates.